Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something pretty fascinating within Advanced Conversational Hypnosis, the Emotional Trance Method, ETM. This comes from training by Virginie.
That's right.
And our deep dive is really focusing on how this specific method, ETM, can be, well, a real catalyst for significant personal breakthroughs for clients.
Exactly. And what's really interesting about ETM and what we'll be unpacking is this idea that the subconscious, it sometimes communicates, processes stuff through physical sensations during the trance state.
Physical sensations. Okay.
Yeah, and these sensations, sometimes they can be difficult, even unpleasant, but they're seen as a key part of unlocking some really profound change.
Right. So it's not about immediately trying to get rid of those feelings, but maybe understanding them as signals, important messages from the subconscious.
That's the core idea, yeah. So where should we jump in to understand how this actually works in practice?
Well, you mentioned a phrase from the training, something about a container.
Ah, yes, that really stood out. The phrase was, roughly the container is finished. Virginie apparently said it, maybe even repeated it for emphasis. It sounds like a declaration, like something significant has shifted.
Okay, the container is finished. What exactly is this container supposed to represent here?
Well, based on the context, it seems to refer to the subconscious sort of holding pattern, like how an issue or a problem is being held internally. So when she says it's finished, it signifies a release. A resolution has happened for the client deep down.
A resolution. Okay.
And interestingly, she apparently shared her own experience that she often feels physically cold after seeing this kind of realization in a client.
Cold. Huh. So like a tangible physical sign that this internal shift, this resolution has happened.
It seems to be, yeah. At least for her, it's a personal marker, which really highlights how these deep subconscious changes can actually show up physically. And this leads us right into a really crucial point from the training. What do you do when a client experiences a really difficult sensation during a session? The example given was intense, something like feeling a dagger in the stomach.
Wow. Yeah, dagger in the stomach. That sounds pretty confronting. Your first instinct as a practitioner might be to, make that stop immediately.
Right. You'd want to soothe that discomfort.
So what's the ETM approach here? Do you try and make it go away right then?
This is where the method gets really specific. The guidance, generally, is that these kinds of unpleasant sensations, they should be traversed.
Traversed, meaning?
Meaning, instead of trying to suppress or eliminate the feeling, the process actually encourages the client to fully experience it, to allow it. The idea is that this allows the subconscious to communicate what it needs to, and importantly, release the underlying issue connected to that sensation.
So allow the experience rather than cut it short.
Exactly. Because, as the trainer explained it, that sensation, even something as vivid and unpleasant as feeling like a dagger, is often the subconscious's chosen way of expressing something that needs processing. It's the language it's using in that hypnotic moment.
Okay, that shifts the perspective quite a bit. It's not just a bad feeling, it's communication.
Precisely. And this links to another really interesting point made in the training, a parallel drawn with difficult life experiences.
Ah, right. I remember that connection.
Yeah. The trainer noted how often, challenging or even really tough times in life can ultimately lead to significant personal growth or positive shifts down the line.
Mm-hmm.
So she suggested that these difficult sensations in hypnosis, while definitely not fun or something you'd seek out, might function similarly. Experiencing them fully, traversing them, could potentially unlock something. She used the word marvelous.
Marvelous. So the discomfort itself could be the pathway to the breakthrough, almost like you have to go through the storm to get to the calm on the other side, but at a subconscious level.
That's a good way to put it. It captures the essence. It's not about causing discomfort, but recognizing that when it arises spontaneously, it likely holds the key to resolving something important, if it's allowed to unfold.
That actually makes a certain amount of sense intuitively. Like, you have to confront a problem to solve it. You can't just ignore it.
Right.
Now, something else mentioned was about the subconscious being ready or not ready.
Absolutely crucial point. The trainer really emphasized that the subconscious generally won't bring up or engage with issues it isn't actually prepared to resolve at that time.
Okay.
She mentioned how sometimes people might express feeling hesitant or just not ready for certain kinds of deep therapeutic work, and that feeling itself is often the subconscious signaling, nope, not now.
So conversely, if these difficult sensations do come up during an ETM session, it could actually be a sign that the subconscious is ready, that it's bringing this up because it's prepared to deal with it.
That's definitely the implication. The subconscious is presenting what needs to be addressed in the way it deems necessary for processing and resolving it right then and there.
Okay. But this brings up a really important safety consideration. We need to be clear, right? There's a difference between a difficult sensation and something worse, like an abreaction.
Yes, a critical distinction. The training materials were very clear on this. A difficult sensation, like the metaphorical dagger or maybe feeling nauseous, is something the client can generally experience and process within the trance state without being totally overwhelmed.
Okay.
An abreaction, on the other hand, that's different. It's a much more intense, potentially overwhelming emotional or even physical release. The client might start re-experiencing a past trauma in a raw, unfiltered way that isn't helpful and could even be re-traumatizing or destabilizing.
And in that case, the approach is different.
Absolutely. If it looks like a genuine abreaction, the guidance is clear. The practitioner needs to step in gently and skillfully help the client exit the trance state. You don't push through an abreaction in the same way.
So it really comes down to careful observation, understanding the intensity, and knowing the difference. A challenging feeling is one thing, potentially useful communication.
Right.
But a full-blown reliving of trauma requires immediate de-escalation and bringing the client back to a safe, grounded state.
Precisely. One is seen within ETM as part of the resolution process. The other is a sign that the processing capacity has been overwhelmed. Different phenomena, different responses needed.
Okay, that distinction is vital. Now, this begs a question that apparently came up in the training too, and is probably on people's minds.
Why?
Why? Why would the subconscious present something unpleasant, like feeling pierced by an arrow, as one example went, instead of just a nice feeling during a breakthrough?
Yeah, it's a deep question, isn't it? Why the difficulty? And the thinking seems to be tied to how the subconscious stores and releases things. Often these unpleasant sensations are like symbolic representations of old pain, maybe past trauma or unresolved conflicts that have become lodged somatically in the body.
Lodged in the body.
Exactly. So the subconscious might need to actually express that stored discomfort, bring that feeling to the surface as a necessary part of the release. Think of it like an energetic knot. It has tension. And as that knot starts to untangle, you might feel that tension physically.
That's a helpful image.
Yeah.
So it's not always just a smooth letting go. Sometimes you have to feel the shape of the thing that's being released as it unwinds.
That seems to be the idea. But it's also important to remember, as the training highlighted, that not all sensations are these intensely negative ones, right?
Okay. Yeah, what were some other examples?
Things like butterflies in the stomach, which can be excitement or anxiety depending on context, or shifts in body temperature, suddenly feeling hot or feeling cold, like the trainer's own experience.
Right, the cold feeling.
Yeah, and how someone perceives these can vary hugely. What feels slightly odd to one person might be intensely uncomfortable for another, or even interpreted positively in a different situation.
So it's a whole spectrum, not just dramatic, painful stuff. It could be subtle shifts, too.
Yeah, definitely. But for the practitioner guiding the session, what's the key sign that something has actually resolved? That the subconscious has done its work through this sensation?
Yeah, how do you know when it's done?
This is super important. The training stressed that the persistence of a sensation generally means the subconscious is still working on it. The resolution, the completion of that specific piece of work, is often marked by the sensation naturally just dissipating, fading away, or maybe transforming into something else entirely, something neutral or even pleasant.
Ah, okay, so when the dagger feeling is just gone, or the arrow vanishes, that's the signal.
That's a very strong indicator, yes. The presence and intensity of the feeling are like a gauge, showing the process is active. Its absence or a significant shift often signals completion of that particular stage.
Makes sense. The feeling is there while the work is happening, and it leaves when the work is done.
Exactly. Its presence means processing. Its absence often means resolution, at least for that specific sensation or issue.
Okay, and once that sensation is faded, what then? Does the process just end? The training mentioned testing, I think.
Right. It doesn't just stop there. After the main sensation resolves, the next step is typically what's called testing the demarcation.
Demarcation.
Yeah, ensuring the issue that was just resolved is now clearly separated, distinct from other related issues or feelings in the subconscious, like drawing a clear boundary around it internally, making sure it's cleanly resolved.
Okay, sealing it off almost.
That kind of. And then following that, the focus shifts to integration, helping the client integrate that resolution, that change, into their wider experience, their conscious understanding, their life going forward.
So it's resolve the sensation, check the boundaries, then integrate the change.
That seems to be the general flow described.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really illuminating deep dive into this emotional trance method. It really reframes potentially difficult physical sensations, doesn't it? Instead of just problems, they can be seen as, well, vital communication. Pathways, even.
Absolutely. Pathways that can lead to some quite profound and lasting breakthroughs. It really underscores that the subconscious has its own logic, its own ways of working that aren't always comfortable but can be incredibly effective.
And that these sensations, handled correctly within the ETM framework, are often signs of healing in progress, not something to just shut down. The principle seems to be allow, traverse, support.
Precisely. In a safe therapeutic space, of course.
So a final thought maybe for everyone listening. Think about your own life. Have there been times when going through something difficult, maybe uncomfortable or challenging, actually led to a really positive change or growth down the road?
Mm-hmm. A tough project, a difficult conversation.
Exactly. How might understanding this dynamic, this idea from ETM that discomfort can precede resolution, shift how you view personal growth, or maybe just how you think about the power, the sometimes hidden processes of your own subconscious mind?
It definitely gives you something to reflect on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The wisdom embedded even in difficult experiences.
It really does. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.